Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Be Mindful Psychology's Mind Map podcast. Today, I'm joined with legendary footballer and mental health advocate, and also Britain's brainiest footballer, Mr. Clarke Carlisle.
Good morning.
I did a little Google on you. I was like, give me an interesting fact about Clarke. And they were like, he's the brainiest footballer. I was like, brilliant.
I'm not even the brainiest in my own house. Do you know what? It's really bizarre because I was never the most intelligent at any of the football clubs that I was at. But, and I think this is like a learning point for anybody and everybody. I was willing to put myself out there, Jodie. You know, so in football, in an environment where everyone gets castigated, it's like, oh, you're a footballer, concentrate on your day job. You know, I had other interests and I had future career aspirations. So there was a couple of opportunities for me to, take on my education. But this one in question was a game show while I was injured in 2002, maybe 2003. Carol Vorderman hosted a whole Britain's Brainiest series. You won't remember it, you're too young. But
I'm
it was
not too young. You say that. We are of a similar age.
No danger whatsoever. But come on, we'll come to that later. It was like Britain's Brainiest Nurse, Britain's Brainiest Taxi Driver, and one was Britain's Brainiest Footballer. So if we're going to be truthful, I won a game show against 11 other footballers. I'm not Britain's brainiest footballer, but putting myself out there, I won the show and then I got that mantle. And I'm not going to lie, it's opened up so many doors.
It's on record and I take that as fact.
Well, Wikipedia says that I'm Welsh. I ain't Welsh.
Oh, that's brilliant. So thank you for coming today.
It's a pleasure.
I guess the question that I wanted to ask first, which is a question that's not always asked in the right way, particularly with men, is how are you?
Oh, okay. My wife and I love saying this to each other because it's not how are you? It's like, but how are you?
How are you really?
How? Just literally how? How did we come to be? It's incredible. When you take it to that existential level, I love life, you know. I absolutely love it. And it is challenging, and it's emotional, and it's tough, and it's brilliant and rewarding. And today, amidst all those challenges and the rewards, I'm really good, thank you.
That's good. Because I know that recently, there's, like with everyone, there's been some tough times.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're somebody that already has fragile mental health in the past and it could tip at any point, then lots of things are brought to us that can cause us to think, am I going to take a few steps back, or am I going to be able to sit and hold with myself, my thoughts and my feelings and my well-being, or is it going to topple over into something else? And so some people put a brave face on and we do mask how we're feeling. And especially, I guess, in a public eye, sometimes people might say, how are you? And I know when we did the podcast with Natasha, she very much talked about she was at the bottom of despair and still did the smiling assassin face that she does of just smile and everybody else will feel better because you're smiling, so that makes somebody else smile. So I think one of the most important questions, particularly in my job, is how are you really?
How am I really? My answer doesn't change much. However, I can elaborate further. And you just said about 4 different things that I'd love to comment on there, just in that question. My summary in my first answer is the truth. You know, one of the misconceptions around wellness is that when you're well, you're always happy, that life is plain sailing, you know, That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That I am well, which means that my grandfather passed away last week, which means that our severely, oh, I hate the word severely, profoundly autistic daughter is going through so many difficulties and challenges, and we're adapting and evolving accordingly. It means that my son's just had a tonsillectomy, which he had complications. My eldest daughter is pregnant and just got married and is moving into a new house, and my wife and I are transitioning into a different stage of work life and huge financial difficulties at home. And I'm well. I'm well. And what that means is all of these things that come up, and I don't say all those for people to get the violins out
No.
for me. It's to put into context that we as humans are getting hit by things left, right, and centre every single day. And I am now in a place where I know that I will manage each of these things constructively and productively. So, yeah, they can be difficult, but at no point will they become dangerous to me, which was the first port of call. But even now, even though they're challenging, and they might cause, what we would classify as negative emotions. I might feel low about them one day. I might feel frustrated. Some situations might anger me. I can process those emotions contemporaneously and constructively rather than suppressing and avoiding them or acting out on them. Those things don't happen in my life anymore. And that hasn't come about by accident. It's a deliberate, conscious effort that I and my wife, and subsequently my wider family, have made to be diligent about our wellness. That self awareness, that understanding is pivotal to making growth in life. And two things that I want to pick up from what you just said in that intro. First is about masking. We always do this in British society. We're pendulum swingers. So we're like, oh, you don't bottle everything up, da da da, you've suppressed everything. So they go right to the other end and they're like, oh, bring your whole self to work and da da da, share with everyone. That's bullshit. You don't bring your whole self to work. Work is a professional environment. We have to engage in certain ways. I don't bring my whole self to every scenario that I'm in. So the point I'm making is to mask in order to be appropriate for the circumstance, that's good. I'm not going to speak to you the same way I speak to my wife, the same way I speak to my daughter, the same way I speak
Not
to
yet,
King's Charles.
anyway.
Hey, easy. This second marriage is my final one. I'm sorry if that was inappropriate. But the point I'm making is sometimes that masking, it's not hiding, it's presenting the most appropriate version of yourself.
But don't you think social media makes people present the very best version a lot of the time? And that's what influences a lot of the young people that we work with, because they see only a lot of the time the very best that's put out there.
Yes, and that is an extension of and another conversation. The flip side to this point of presenting the appropriate version of yourself is when you're applying your mask in any given scenario, and the goal is to actually hide some kind of emotional challenge or distress or difficulty that you're experiencing. That's when your flag should be raised. And the solution to that is not to offload that to whoever's in front of you. So if you're at work, it's like, oh, I need to put on this mask so that I can keep these emotions in about my grandfather's funeral that's coming up in this time, and I'm thinking about his eulogy. It's not for me to just go, oh my gosh, I got this on my mind, blah, 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 to my CEO. They might have a role that's good for that. But the point is I need to acknowledge that I've got spiked emotion and I'm wearing this mask in order to protect, hide, or suppress.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing that, I need to ensure that I've got the right mechanism and people to take that mask off in a safe space and environment, share, offload, and get, objective, independent insight into what I'm doing. And that's the growth, that's the learning, that safe space. You know, this is a fantastic one, what you've got here at Be Mindful. You know, just it started with me with professional spaces, because historically my relationships were all distorted. And they were all distorted because I was never able to be free about how I felt, because I was always concerned with what that person thought. You know, external validation was my currency. And so I couldn't tell you anything about anything that might cause you to have a negative opinion of me. So I can't be free to anyone in that scenario. You know,
But I think lots of people do that though, don't they?
they do. A lot of people do that, and and this is where it comes round to your point. Our current society, you know, it heavily kind of pushes us down that channel, because everything that we do is for likes and and retweets and followers and acknowledgement. It's almost as though when I started out in life, nothing. If you said you'd met someone, it hadn't happened unless you got an autograph or a photograph. It's like, yeah, and that's how you proved it. Whereas now, it's everything that you do. It doesn't actually exist, or it doesn't have value unless you've put it on socials and it's been verified and ratified there. And it pushes everyone, especially our younger generations who are growing up in this tech environment. There's no kind of autonomy in this. There's no agency. There's no self-sufficiency about worth and value. And I'm really glad that, let's say, what did I do the other day? I weeded the back garden 3 days ago. You know, I devised this little method. It was a theory of mine. I don't want to use weed killer because of our autistic daughter. She puts everything in her mouth. So I used boiling water, and I cooked the thistles, left them for 2 days, and then I could uproot them. And I was really proud of that.
Do you want another top tip for that?
Go on.
Salt.
Oh, salt's a good one.
Yeah, just pour salt on weeds,
Yeah.
then put your boiling water on, and it gets right down in any of the roots that are penetrating around the soil.
Look at that evolution of my knowledge. I love it. Growing every day's a school
Literally
day.
growing.
Or not, literally dying. But my point being is that I've gone to bed and I'm really happy with that. But it's almost as though we're in an age where, for me to be content with that, I have to put it on a social media site for it to then be approved by other people that it was a good thing that I did. And once you do that, you know, that we lose the opportunity for contentment in life. You know, self-fulfilled, self-induced contentment. And gosh, I don't know if this is my special interest or what, but, you know, I think we're severely lacking the ability to have just latent gratitude for where we are and what we have. You know, we have a society where that person's doing it better, that person's got more, you need this, without this you've not made it. And it was 6 years ago, you know, I'm talking like Yoda or something. It was 6 years ago where I started that journey. I hate that word as well. Started that walk and that pathway to understanding that I have so much to be grateful for. And in every circumstance that I'm in, the first question I ask myself is, what am I grateful for in this circumstance? And sometimes it's hard to find gratitude. But when you've been where I've been, you know, which is after multiple suicide attempts right on the edge of existence, sometimes I'm just grateful for the breath in my body to experience what it is that I'm going through.
Do you know there's a theme? I know this is only the second podcast, but this is in the first podcast, the theme from Natasha was very much, it's the little things that matter. It's not the grand gestures. It's not the big, massive things. We talked about, have you heard of a Yes Day? Have you seen the film Yes Day?
Not yesterday, no, but
So the concept is the kids can get up and you have to say yes
Oh, okay.
all day. There's parameters around it, like you can't spend so much money and
Yeah.
you can't do anything illegal. But she asked her daughter about the idea of, what's the biggest sort of thing that you would want, or what's the best memory. And she thought it would be something like going to Las Vegas, all of the things that they do. And her daughter said it was snuggling up to you on the couch watching a Disney film.
Yeah.
Which is a little thing, but obviously not for a daughter. That's massive. And I think what you've just said, it is about the little things that really do matter and that connection. And I was at a conference once, I think it was a Rethink one, I'm not too sure, and we surveyed lots and lots of service users there, and it was about what's the best therapy that you've had.
Oh, I bet you have
DBT,
some good answers.
EMDR, CBT. No, so when they shared the answer, it was making a cup of tea, but it wasn't about the cup of tea. It was that somebody sat down and listened, and it was that small thing. And therapists sat around the room and were shocked. And I thought, well, I'm not actually shocked by that answer, because it's the small moments in life that actually matter. We get too hooked up now on grand gestures, big baby showers, comparing, are we doing Christmas Eve boxes, and are we doing, the elf on the shelf, and actually it's just the special moments in life.
I totally agree. It's that's one of the greatest changes that's happened in my parental evolution. My eldest is 26. With my ex-wife, I have 17, 15-year-olds. My lad's 18 actually in a month. And at home with my wife, 7 and 5-year-old girls. And one of the things, especially coming through the industry of football when I did, which is, with the eldest 3, I was hooked on that material aspect of provision. So it was, I thought I was doing a good job if we were buying a bigger house, a better car, if I was giving the kids 25 presents instead of 20, and all of this, year on year. And again, it's been part of my evolution of self, where I know from my experience that all I ever wanted was to be acknowledged and to be heard, and just, valued just for me, not for anything I've done, just for being me. It's one of the hardest learnings to make. But then I translated that into my parenting, and with our children, provision, to my mind now, for them, it isn't about the things. It's about being present. It's about not just listening to what they have to say, but acknowledging, considering, giving, credence to their perspective. But
I suppose as well, when you're raising somebody with neurodiversity issues, that actually it's not materialistic things that they want.
Definitely not.
They need your time, patience, and love, and they need you to learn to be a parent in a very different way.
Definitely, it's one of the analogies I used at the task conference when we met, and I absolutely love it. It is, I've had an Apple phone from inception, and then so what's that, 20 odd years, and then I just started a new job, and they gave me an Android phone, and for the life of me, I cannot work out this phone. I didn't know how to answer it for 10 days. Even now, it beeps at me, and I haven't got a clue what it's doing. The reality is that Android phone can do exactly what my Apple phone can do. In fact, it can do some things better than my Apple phone, but because I don't understand its functionality, I can't get the best out of it. I have to change the way that I interact with it. I have to learn new processes, and that's exactly what it's been like having Bo come into our lives. I have 4 Apple kids and 1 Android. That's and I'm doing my level best to learn the functionality of this Android child, and she's teaching me so much about myself. She's a phenomenal human being, and the ripple effect of it is utterly incredible because Esley, who is 2 years younger than Bo, a lockdown baby, born into lockdown. But then, so you can imagine, we were living with my mother-in-law. Cara just had Esley. Esley was newborn, and Mam works for the police, so we were really bubbled off from society for like 2 years. And Esley learned all of her mannerisms and behaviours and interactions from her neurodistinct or older sister. Oh yeah, neurodistinct is the new term, isn't it? Not neurodivergent, neurodistinct. Because apparently, according to the most recent research, there over 90% of us have neurodiverse traits. So we can no longer say that that's diverse or divergent from, because again, that's normative language. It's another podcast, but don't worry. Well, I like the term neurodistinct, but in our house, we call it neurospicy. We're all a bit neurospicy. Everyone is, whether diagnosable or not, but it's about understanding, you're becoming self-aware. But back to this. Bo, profoundly autistic, and, she would stim, and Ez would try and stim, and she can't. We're like, oh, baby, we have to establish boundaries for Esley that are different to Bo's. Bo needs a bit of latitude in certain scenarios and situations, and Ez is like, well, Bo does this, why can't I do that? So we have to explain, well, Bo's autistic and she needs support in this way, and we have to allow her to express herself vocally or emotionally in this way. Because again, Bo was non-verbal for 5 years, so there was a lot of collective growth and learning in that. And Esley, at 5 years of age, is one of the most compassionate, empathetic, caring, nurturing individuals I have ever seen. And she seems to have this innate elite athlete desire to win in there at the same time. So she's almost got like the best of both worlds, but I just can't explain the tiny humans that we've got at home at the moment. They're just utterly incredible.
How was the sort of first stages of becoming diagnosed with Bo? How did you have to go through the NHS or?
We did, yeah. Do you know what? We had a fantastic experience. I know a lot of people have had horrendous experiences going through the diagnostic process, and especially because we started it beginning of lockdown, and day one of lockdown one, we moved from Lancashire over to Newcastle, over to Northumberland. So we actually switched authorities and everything. Absolute breeze it was for us, They were outstanding, very supportive. My wife Carrie was just on everything, absolutely everything, whether it was learning, process, blah, blah, blah. We got an occupational therapist appointment, which was just phenomenal to aid our understanding. And
you are one of the first people when I have said I'm an occupational therapist who hasn't gone, what's that?
Well, let me tell you, you and your colleagues provided some fundamental knowledge to our knowledge as parents, but also to inform our decision making in what Bo's needs were, and the environments that we put around her at home, but also what she needed in her school environment. And then, I'm a man of faith, and I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe that, the right things are brought to us at the right time. And we happened upon an additional resources provision that was piloting over in Northumberland in Seaton Sluice. And Bo got to go to school in this provision where in the first year, there were 6 kids and 9 staff. And that first year was just utterly tremendous. she said her first word in that year, which was pop pop, which was for me.
Oh,
And
which was for
and
me.
that's why I've got pop on my plates, because pop pop.
Oh.
You know, I don't know how many of the listeners will have had experiences, like full experiences with neurodiverse children, neurodistinct children, and with autism, call it dysregulation. Your child can emotionally dysregulate, and we say it's seemingly random, but it's not. It's always anchored in something. That's where we have to learn the functionality in the environment, etc. But to regulate your child can take a number of things. You have these weighted vests and stuff like that, or lights or lack of lights. Bo needs regulation by touching me. So she could be going west, and then we just hold hands and she calms down. And I can't tell you, you want to provide for your children. You want to be there, and this is what I was talking about earlier. It's not about things. When you get that moment where you are the thing, and you're that child's human, and that just brings them, calm and peace. I can't tell you how much that means. It's just utterly incredible.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Oh, gosh. I think it's something sometimes we forget. We forget the impact that this also has on parents and how much we expect parents as therapists to understand what we're saying, to do. Would you like a tissue?
Not just yet. No,
You
thank
okay?
you. No, I'm good. But I see the ready in the background. Yeah, look, still half hour to go yet. We're going deeper.
I guess it's about how much support you get as parents, because I meet parents on the daily who are burnt out, stressed, can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That sometimes for the older children, the frustration parents transfer onto the older child, and not getting it right and feeling that they're letting them down and just not knowing, and the despair, and then that impacting on the child's dysregulation and just the cycle.
Yeah.
I met a young boy, actually. He was a teenager at school last week. And I don't know if you've heard of pathological demand avoidance. So it's called PDA.
Right.
And it's on the spectrum. And it's very much sort of any sort of demand that's put onto somebody, they can become quite dysregulated and feel that they need to take control and become quite confrontational sometimes, or fight or flight from that situation.
Okay.
And we were sat in a session, and I said to him, "What's the positives of having PDA?" "None. There is none." I said, there definitely is, but because society has put out there that PDA is about a child where they don't have boundaries with the parent, and the parent can't say no, and the child drops to the ground. There's that connotation of what having that diagnosis is. He's then led to believe that he's no longer special, he's no longer lovable, he has no benefit, he's just existing. And for me, I thought that is really, really sad. How can we change that? What can we do? And I think some of it comes back to some of the parents, when I went to a parents' meeting, were saying we go through the diagnosis process, it takes a long time, we get the diagnosis, they tell you what it is, but what does that mean?
Yes, yeah. Well, there's a huge education piece for us generally in society. There are many, many topics on which we have not been sufficiently educated. Menopause is one. I know this is going like digressing massively, but how can we not have been taught about this as kids when it will happen to 50% of the population and it will impact on everybody's life with no understanding? I don't get it. When there's so much that we can do to, be supportive and mindful and understand physiological, biological, psychological changes that will happen to virtually every woman in the world. How can that not have been brought to our attention at school? So, coming to this, um, we need to raise the base level of understanding and awareness around neurodiversity, neurodistinction, however you want to phrase it. And when it gets to the medical model and the diagnostic model, I totally appreciate, it's the same with all mental health, that we need to be able to categorize to treat. That has to happen, you know. That being said, with mental health and with neurodiversity, oftentimes they're on a spectrum stroke continuum. So we're trying to put people into certain Venn diagrams, and you might fit more in this and more in that, blah blah blah. But still, we're going to give you that label. Now that I don't really like, because once you give someone a label, boom, they're slapped with it, and it's well, it's labeling theory. It becomes your identity. You sometimes you will fulfil that. Find that a lot with personality disorders. But what parents need to know is that label should be then like a catalyst to a learning journey and a process and an understanding of process. Not that label is everything, but what it tells us is that you need to learn about this, that, and the other about your child, because these things may become apparent, and your support will come through these avenues. So please go and explore them. And again, this is another argument. There needs to be agency in that. The parents have to do it. Society and services aren't going to do it for them. This is something that we all do together. But that diagnosis, to my mind, is the beginning of guiding your learning journey and your action journey. And then once you do that, then it's for you to understand and explore your child and your relationships, whether it's PDA or not. Bo now is contrary. She is contrary to the nth degree. So she might not even be in the room or involved in the conversation. I was like, Esley, would you like a yogurt? As I said, no, thank you. From the next room, yes, yogurt! Esley, yes, yogurt! Bo is just contrary to everything that happens. And rather than engaging in argument or confrontation with her, then just acknowledge whatever she says. Okay, Bobo, yes, yogurt. And she calms down. Da, 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 da. Oh, that's funny. We were going to McDonald's, or as they calls it, Arnold Donald's. We were going to Arnold Donald's. And I said to Esley, would you like some fish fingers, Esley? Would you like a fish finger Happy Meal? A bow in the back of the car went, fish feet, sad meal.
I mean,
but that just highlighted to me that she just wants, it's brilliant. It's a fantastic skill. It's almost like Timmy Mallett's word association game. You throw a word out there, and she has this incredible ability to, flip you the contrary or the opposite and present it to you. And so, just like you were saying, is there anything good about PDA? Well, that's a positive skill that she has. I don't know how we're going to utilise it unless Wackaday comes back and
I think she could be with your teammate, honestly.
But this is it, there's a cognitive ability there that's latent. So rather than dismiss her and tell her that she's being naughty by being contrary, let's explore that as we go on. And she's reading now. She read me a book the other day, which just blew my mind. There is always something that we can either position as positive or explore as positivity in all scenarios.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do here at Be Mindful is work with parents. So we've started like a new parents group, because sometimes they feel lost, burnt out, in despair themselves, or then they've got the diagnosis and gone through the pathways and then think, yes, I've done it, I've got there, but then they've not thought the what's next. And I think systems don't always work how we perceive or think they're going to work. You're going to get this school, you're going to get this support, this social worker, this. It doesn't always map out how we're taught that it will, or again, a life skill at school. We're not taught any of this, that if there's a difference, if there's a need, we just get taught at school, go to the GP, don't we? You know,
Yeah.
if you're not well, go to the doctors. But then what?
Yeah.
And how long might that last? And for some parents, last week a lady she broke down actually, and was just in tears because she was like, I'm so glad that he started year 7 at this special education provision. I quit my job to look after him because I couldn't cope with the phone calls. I wanted the best for him, but it impacted on his sister, you know, like the whole family. She's like, I'm not going to go back to work just yet. And I said, you do right. I said, have you got a plan? She went, I said, what about a plan to look after you for a little bit
Yes.
now that you know that he's safe and you can take that breather? She went, I might do, but I've forgotten how that is. What do I do? And because she's so busy looking after everyone else. And that was the talk about, if we don't help you, then your mental health, it's going to get to the point where you're going to need to seek the doctor, have the meds, have a diagnosis, have a treatment plan. And she's like, I can see that happening, yeah. So I think sometimes it's about, as a parent, knowing when we need to say, help.
You know that this is my MO, you know. I will categorically state to anyone and everyone, you must prioritise self-care. And the need for that steps up a notch when you're a parent carer, you know, when you're in that role. Because, you know, when I was chair of the PFA, we supported a lot of respite cares, you know, for parents of children with various challenges. And I was like, yeah, it's nice. Why are we giving them a holiday? Let me tell you, I fully understand now, because the demand, it's incessant. It never ends. You know, sleep isn't sleep. You know, we Carrie does the majority of, I say majority, 99% of the night checks on Bobo, but she'll go in and Bo will have wrapped a ribbon from a teddy around her toe and her toe's blue. Or she'll have trapped her head, you know, in around, and whether it's a sensory thing or not, she'll find it a comfortable place to sleep, but it's a life-threatening scenario. So, you know, all those noises in the night, it's like, boom, you're constantly riding here on hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And your rest isn't even restful. So that need to ensure that you are in a place where you have enough to give the next day, you have enough to give the next week, it is so important. Otherwise, just like you said, you will be the one that's in need of care, mental health care, whether it be for stress, anxiety, burnout, or whatever. And it's really challenging as a parent. If you are classed as neurotypical and you've had a neuronormative upbringing, which everyone of my generation and older has, then when you come into a parental experience of having a neurodiverse, neurodistinct child, it's not just the care, it's not just the energy that takes. There is a psychological values shift that has to take place in order for you to embrace that role. You've got to totally transform what you had for child expectations, for imposition of environments, for what are what do you call them? You know, like progression points in life, rites of passage. Everything has to change.
But also, you have to then become the teacher to everybody in your network and surrounding you and your loved one.
Oh, you say that, but we shouldn't. We shouldn't have to.
But we do, because people look at you blank.
There you go. You see, it's because we're worried about what they're thinking about our child. Do you know what? This is our Bobo, and yeah, she's in the trolley at Costco, and she's dancing and she's signing. Yeah, person at Costco says you can't have your child in the trolley. I said, well, yes, I can and I will. A, because she wants to, but B, because it'll probably be more of a hazard if she was roaming around your floor. Bo sits in the front seat. Got stopped by the police the other day. Like she's under 14. I'm aware she's under 14, officer, but she's profoundly autistic. If I sit her in the back, not only does she dysregulate, but she'll undo a seatbelt. She's 7 now, and she will cover my eyes when I drive. There isn't currently a provision, for us to allow her in the front room. But if you're willing to allow me to put her in the back and force her to stay in the back and be distracted by that while she covers my eyes, and then whatever happens, then please put that on file. It's like, yeah, she can stay in the front. I was like, thank you. She's in a booster seat and she's safe in there. But the thing is, we're apologetic for our children, and we shouldn't be. There's nothing less than about Bo. There's just an understanding of her needs and how she sits and views the world. And when we're driving, she views the world from the front seat, and she loves it, And she'll sing her songs and give a running narrative, but the law says I should do otherwise. Well, no, it's a law that's anchored in that historical perception and understanding, and we need to evolve as a society to ensure that we are not just inclusive. There's another word that I hate, which is tolerance. There are a lot of mainstream schools that say they're neurotolerant, and I'm like, I do not want my daughter to be tolerated anywhere.
Included, accepted, loved,
Championed.
supported, cherished.
Yes.
All of those words that you would apply to every other student.
I don't want any tolerance of my children. They will be loved and cherished, supported and championed.
You would think in this day and age and where we are at in society that all of these types of things that we're talking about are put in the curriculum so that they learn, even about how to form friendships, and that friendships don't just naturally occur. And, that staff and teachers or us as parents, we need to think outside the box sometimes on how to encourage our children and how to be accepting and warm, and that, people aren't different. We're all the same. We're all human beings at the end of the day. But it doesn't happen. And I guess there's loads of situations that have occurred now for years and years and years. And it's to the point where you think, when is any of this ever going to be any different? I think sport's a good one. And I touch on this. One, because you're a footballer, but two, from my own experience of it, of you have a child who has an amazing talent. They're brilliant at football. They are buzzing. The self-esteem's absolutely, amazing. It fits in this stereotypical, my boy is great at football, and as a man, as a dad, I feel really proud. And as a mum, you're the soccer mum on a Sunday morning at the sidelines. And you go to all the matches, and you toe the line, and you do everything, and you take them everywhere, and they get selected, and they get seen, and they get scouted, and school treats them a little bit differently, because they're now the captain of the football team and things, and they play for this club and that club. And then all of a sudden, you get that call one day, they're not picked anymore. They're no longer in that squad, that team. And I think so many parents that I know, just from having boys myself, of then what? They're sort of disregarded, aren't they? And the child's football is no worse and no better, and they can't understand why nobody wants them anymore at that club that they've made friends with, that they've been to for the last so many Saturdays and played matches with. And then you see them shrinking, and you see the impact on their mental health, and you see them sitting in the room and turning to the gaming, and yet everything that we talk about is, let's get them out there, let's get them doing sports, it's healthy, let's get them in with friends, let's get them as part of a team, and that all shrinks away.
It's brutal, isn't it?
But we're still doing it.
We are, and it's a whole nother podcast, the cannon fodder that the football industry treats our children as. It disgusts me, something that I spoke of when I was at the PFA, and everyone falls behind the legality of it. So as children, They're they're not employees, so they're nothing to do with the football club. They're not professionals, so they don't fall under the remit of the players' union. And the the kind of social contract and interaction between the FA, the schools, the Sunday clubs, and then the professional club is one that where there is no provision for this aftercare, so to speak. But the difficulty in that is that the dream is so big that it's not just the child who lives it. The parents vicariously walk it. They get sold it by the club. You know, at the highest level, parents are given jobs in the local area so that their child will be in the geographical remit to go to said football club. Yeah, that's human trafficking,
Yeah.
but just under the guise of football, so it's all good, you know. So it's abhorrent. Now, football, Premier League academies, PFA have put one or two things on, FA have put on one or two things, nothing that deals with it in its entirety, en masse, it, in any way that's commensurate with the need and fit for purpose. Nothing near that. The thing that concerns me is that women's football is now walking down the same road. And, you know, I've been saying this for a number of years. Women's football has the opportunity, I believe, to do football right. And there are so many things that are, you know, that are growing at a pace that is phenomenal. What we've just seen is the first £1 million female player. You know, we're seeing the Champions League and the finances and the viewing figures, participation figures going through the roof. And when you scale en masse like that, it's very easy to just say, oh, we do this in men's game, we'll do it in the women's game.
But what I don't understand, for example, for me, is every team has a football physio, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because my best friend's hubby was one. And I'll say, so you had a sports psychologist, didn't you? Like, to him, I'll say, you when you worked at like Man City or wherever, and he'd be like, nope. And I was like, but you're treating physically how somebody is. And if they get an injury or if they're out for so many weeks or if, you know, and same in boxing, so we're talking to Natasha about it, you know, you get knocked down and the psychological damage of that. Surely there's a sports psychologist, a physiotherapist if you pull a muscle. But no, you don't get them.
Well, they're doing football in the men's game now. I mean, we brought sports psychologists in. I remember 2007 was the first one that I had at Watford, and the vast majority of clubs went bang up with sports psychologists, and then they realised that actual optimum performance state sports psychology is actually compounding the destructive nature of human psychology, because sports psychology, when it first came on the scene, was all about, you know, performance mindset, win at all costs, you know, dismiss the negative, we will not fail. And it compounded that the transition into everyday life. And players like myself, I would treat my relationships and friendships in the same vein as a match day. Or, you know, oh, that's failed, right, done it, boom, start again. So it compounded the dysfunctional. So now we're seeing a lot of football clubs introduce general psychologists, therapists, etc. That there are well-being officers in every football club in the Premier League, in every academy. There are well-being teams in most clubs. That being said, you see, it's a very simplistic view that we can take from the outside about what's needed in football, and what you've stated is needed, and they've started to put it in. So then the question is about the efficacy and the engagement. And the engagement at the level that's required is not there. Why is it not there? Because these therapists and counsellors, they've got a club badge on. They're part of the football club. So it's not just questions of confidentiality. Even if you believe that they're going to be confidential, there's that latent fear that what you said gets around the team and da 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 da, and it's going to impact you being picked on a Saturday. It's going to impact you getting your next contract. It's the same in every workplace. You know, if we're going to put in a psychological well-being support system, it must be independent of the powers that be.
That's why be mindful of doing so.
That's why you guys are perfectly situated to be that third party provision of well-being in the workplace. I mean, what happens now, whether it's football or whether it's X insurance company down the road, what they do, they send someone on MHFA training for 2 days and then tack on well-being to their day job. And then when something goes wrong, they tell them to go through HR. This is the very department that hires and fires. Why are you going to tell them that you've got issues? And then that goes into
You're so true.
all
It's
of
so
your
right.
reports. It's ludicrous because then, you know, it not only does it lead to employability, but it also leads to questions about aspiration. If you've got a senior leadership team, exec team, you've got a new role coming up or a new project coming up, you've got two candidates. One of them's just spent 6 months with occupational health because of mental health issues, and one hasn't. Who are you going to pick? Now, rightly or wrongly, there are going to be questions about reliability, about productivity, about blah, 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 blah. When in actual fact, if engaged with properly, that person who's been in Occy Health and having support for 6 months should be in a better position than they've ever been, and the person who's not.
It's true, because you know when you're asked that question, or I don't know if you are when you go for job interviews, or even if you have job interviews, but when I have job interviews, the question is, how do you manage stress and burnout is usually the question. And the generic answer that most people will go is, I go to the gym. Clearly I do not. I go walking or something. Everyone has a bit of a generic answer. However, when I do interviews anyway, and I ask that a similar question to that, and I delve a little bit deeper, it's not about finding out the ins and outs of who's been in therapy, but you can always tell somebody who has had a challenge, had support, and has now made a massive life change, and is on top of things and knows exactly how to deal with themselves, you know. And I'm thinking back to some interviews that I did, and I asked a question about, you know, it's working in a trauma-informed practice is really, really, you know, it pulls at the heartstrings. Like, what are your coping mechanisms? And the answer, I didn't ask her any further, but the answer that she gave was amazing. It was, you know, I do self-reflections. I have a gratitude journal. I think about what's really important every day, what's made me feel good. I take a mindful moment. She went through, you know, all the things that as therapists, we actually impart our knowledge on, rather than the generic, I go to the gym, I read a book, I go walking, or I like to eat out. They're usually the ones that people say. And I just thought, do you know what? She's really looking after her well-being. And if she is, I would rather take that individual who can then use that expert by experience to support who it is that we are trying to also say use these techniques to think, what are you on about? Why do I want to do a gratitude journal? How's that going to help? How will I fit in? I think being an expert by experience sometimes is the best life skill. And I guess being a parent and having a child that is not neurotypical, I can talk about that as well, is a massive benefit. I don't see it as a negative. I actually see it as it enhances my life to think about everybody else and the way that I treat people, because what would I want to know as that parent? What would I want my child to know? You know, I think you think of things sometimes, and I think it makes you more compassionate as an individual.
Definitely. Yeah, compassion, empathy. Empathy is one of the greatest traits, you know, and especially in this that we're talking about, if someone can share something with you and you can give them a knowing nod, you know, you're not asking for explanation or justification. You can just hear someone. That is so releasing for the person who's sharing. You know, if you're having to justify your emotions, then you're not actually getting release. You're actually digging yourself further down because you don't feel acknowledged and that your emotions are valid. And just what you've explained there, I mean, it speaks to perspective. your perspective on someone with lived experience is phenomenal. And I believe forward thinking and how it should be. That's not where everyone sits currently. You know, I started a new role at Gordon Moody, and you know, I was speaking about the therapy sessions that I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a few therapy sessions after that I experienced, and then the response was like, oh my gosh, but are you okay? Da, 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 da. And it's almost like you said, connotations. People think that you only do things if something's wrong or when it's bad. And that's the twist that I think or the shift we need to have in our society. We need to shift away from our physical health medical model, where if something goes wrong, I go to the hospital. I'll go to the hospital, they'll patch me up, and they'll send me out stable. And that's it. That's not it. You know, when we're talking about psychological well being stable is not the end goal.
And I think because I'm a little bit different in terms of the modality, I suppose, that I'm an occupational therapist. We look at every aspect of somebody's life. I think, you know, I'm not a physio. I don't just do a specific intervention. I'm not a nurse. I don't just look at the medication aspect of things. Not that that's what a nurse just does, but I think in the role that I have, I feel that when parents or young people come to me, they think that they're coming to see me because something's broken. And I say, actually, my job is to look at what your strengths are and to use those strengths to look at the other areas of life. And it's not about what's broken and it's not about what's missing. It's what about you want to be and how we're going to get you to where you want to be. And are you reaching your full potential right now? Because I can give you the strategies, the skills, the support, and the thinking outside the box so that therapy is fun. It's not you just have to sit there and talk to me. We do things, and that act of doing and showing you that anything is possible. And I think sometimes there's this misconception that I only need to see you, or the parents particular. I don't need an OT, I don't need a stair lift, or I don't need a commode. And I'm like, no, I don't do that. But once I explain what we do, they're like, oh my gosh, so actually I could see you for forever, really, in a way of the things that you can help me with. And I was like, pretty much, but I wouldn't suggest that. But yeah, if you want to. And I think it's the fact that I don't know why we don't share what we do, or people have to be absolutely at breaking point before they realise what help's out there. I have a very small platform. I'm not a big social media person. You know, I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook, I have the LinkedIn only since I started this job. So for me, it was never about shouting out and sharing. But what I have realised is that if I can help people by doing that and saying, look, did you know you can use this tip, this hint, this, if I can make people's lives easier, not showboating what other people say, oh, look, I've got Clarke Carlisle today. It's actually, no, it's about the messages behind things, and people can go in and think, I'm going to try that. What he said today, that's touched me. I'm going to go and do that. That's the difference I feel that I, as a therapist anyway, want to make. Because I just think help is not always readily available, but also everybody that I meet seems to be, I don't actually know what help that I do need.
Exactly. That's the point. And that's why your visibility is key. You know, some people know that they need help but don't know what that help looks like. There are other people who feel that they don't need help right now. However, they should still be engaging in these services, because that's what I use therapy for. It isn't to respond to something bad, it's to underpin my growth and wellness. You know, I'm making insights over these past few months that they're about everyday reactions and responses, everyday self-talk, you know, ways that I can adjust it so that it is constructive and positive, so that I am intervening in any kind of a negative or disruptive or inhibitive self-talk earlier and earlier as it happens. It's nothing to do with a crisis. It's to do with me making myself more efficient and more capable and increasing my capacity. And that's what people should be engaging with yourself and your services and those like this. It's to underpin your capabilities in life, not to repair broken aspects.
Well, I've had an idea.
Oh.
I have had an
Go
idea.
on.
So for me, at the school gates, I'm that mum that I might as well have a T-shirt that says "Be mindful" across it, and everyone will say, "Do you work in CAMS?" And I'm like, "Mm-hmm." So I give out therapy at the school gates, and I see, do you know, just taking 5 minutes of somebody's time when you can see that as a parent they're totally flustered, and if you can just give them one strategy, even if you think, I don't even know if it's going to work because I've not actually assessed the child, I'm just going on what you've said, and here's a little hint or tip. And then they come running back to you like a few days later. I was like, wow, that's 5 minutes that meant a lot to them, but was nothing to me because I was stood there anyway. I've got an idea. Are you ready for this? What do you think to this?
Brace myself. Here we go.
So you know your friends. You are actually friends with Robbie Williams, right?
He is a friend, yes.
So you know he's done the carpool karaoke with James Corden. Do you know what that is?
I do know what
You
that
do
is.
that.
Yeah.
Have you ever done it?
No.
Right. I was thinking of carpool therapy. So that you pull up at the school gates with your car and a parent can get in your car and you've got like nice teas and coffees in little flasks and some little nibbles and croissants. And then you can have like a 2-minute therapy session, sat down with a nice smelly lavender scent coming out of your car heater. And they just feel refreshed for that moment. And then they're ready to go on the day of whatever they face ahead. That's my next mission.
Do you know what? That is absolutely genius. It really is. I could see so many safeguarding issues with that.
Not for the child.
Oh, no. Adult safeguarding, my goodness. Yeah. Heavily branded, signposted. Yes.
I'm going to get my car wrapped in Be Mindful and just sit outside school gates of schools that want me there and give a little 5-minute therapy session.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
We might sing, we might not.
It's a drop-in session, effectively, isn't it? You know,
exactly.
And I think that would be very, very beneficial to many people, especially in that moment just after you've dropped your child off at school, because you're usually breathing a huge sigh of relief, but also with all of that, I've got this to do, and all of that's just happened. And the opportunity to just go and sit in the car and have a little croissant and just breathe. I can see that being very beneficial.
I got in my car. I'd given some advice to someone the other day at school, because lots of things had happened to me, and I gave them some advice, and you could see that they walked away with their shoulders a little bit higher and feeling a little bit more puffed out that they'd been able to talk. And I got in the car and I'd spoken to you and you'd said, I'll come today to come and do the podcast. And because you'd also spoken to me before and said, I know Robbie and things. It's divine intervention, I think it's called, isn't it? Who came on the radio as I started my car? Relight my fire.
Really?
So I just thought, well, he's telling me.
It's a sign.
It's a sign. I'm all about signs.
Oh, wow.
And I know that you have been practicing really hard for a competition that means more to you than winning the FA Cup, and that is the Hula for Happiness Challenge.
Well, I hope I'm more successful at hulaing than I was in the FA Cup. Well, I got to the semi-finals once, so hopefully I'll get to the semi-finals of this. I see you, Natasha. I saw your skills. Let me tell you. These hips don't lie. They don't lie. And no false witness coming from these hips. You'll see this.
And I guess what you didn't know a little bit about the Hula for Happiness is since since Natasha challenged you out on it, was that she runs a program called the We Are Champs program where she goes into schools and it's about growth mindset and resilience.
Yes.
And we're going to be working alongside some sports psychologists as well, doing similar programs with some other sporting personalities. She said, because we did it as a little bit of a laugh at the gym, we were messing about with some hula hoops, and I goes, let's do the Hula for Happiness Challenge. And she said, is that real? I went, no, I've just made it up, but let's go. And we had such a laugh and a giggle, although she took it very competitively and then challenged you about it. But she's going to do it as part of a school program now, like an inter-school challenge, so that She can do 24 seconds. She keeps telling me to say that, but we need to edit it. If you do better, she's having none of that. She's doing it again. But she's going to put it so that the kids can do the Hula for Happiness challenge, and then they can challenge you guys. So they're going to see whether or not if they can be better than Clarke Carlisle, if they can be better than Natasha Jonas.
Brilliant idea.
With their hula skills.
Better than Natasha. 24 seconds. I'm telling you, by the time I finish, there'll still be 21 seconds to go.
That's the cat. He's ready for carpool karaoke. James Corden. Solid.
Dear.
Your next member. But we looked at, so we were joking about the hula for happiness, but actually when you think about it from a therapist perspective, hula hooping is something that's been around for forever. Do you ever see anyone doing it anymore? There was a big phase, wasn't there, recently with the weighted hula hoops? Have you seen that?
Yeah, Carrie's got one. Yeah, I remember she used it for, I don't know, it was maybe 2 weeks, but it's on some kind of like rickety Lego belt thing, and she's like, "Do you mind if I do my hula in while we're watching Netflix?" Trying to watch his program, all crazy. I was like, baby, you know, you do you. I absolutely love you.
Well, everyone thinks.
I cannot listen to this.
Well, people think, oh, you need like expensive tools to have therapy, don't they? They think you need to buy this and do this. Actually, a hula hoop, I costed them. They were $1.99 at B&M's.
Happy days.
Happy days. I mean, other brands are available. But it's something that I don't think is used anymore. They're certainly not in children's playgrounds and things. But actually, the benefits of hula hooping links with sensory needs. It links with actually, emotion regulation. There's lots of research behind it. So I thought, well, let's bring it back.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and the reason for that is that everything that we do now in terms of development and progress, in whether it's academia or physical activity, what we've done as a society, or at least governmentally down, is we've broken it down into constituent functional parts. So what we're teaching kids at 4, 5, 6 years of age will be the core aspects of a specific skill for when they're 18, 19, 20. So yeah, we're going to do this because it'll enable you to play football, let's say, rather than just doing something because it's fun, because it's a really good activity. And learn this because it's fun to learn this, not because it's going to be, oh, this is going to help you do this when you're 25 years of age. Let's allow people to explore.
But I think we forget how... me and you are of a similar age.
I refute this allegation.
I am 41 years old.
No danger.
I had my 41st birthday in the last podcast.
Well, many congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Well, let me borrow your oil of Olay or whatever it is you're using.
Yep. Botox. No, I don't have any. But the things from when me and you were kids, I've forgotten about. Like, I remember having a hula hoop when I was a kid. You maybe didn't.
No, hula hoop luxury. Oh, hey. We were skint when I was a kid. I wanted to play Kirby, but I didn't have a ball or a curb.
Well, I don't know where you grew up. Curbs are everywhere.
Oh gosh, I've never said that before.
But no, like
quality content.
Oh, you're so funny. But the old school stuff, honestly, is coming back around.
It is. Everything. Well, I'll say everything. Lots of things come round in cycles, don't they?
But I think it would. When you think about mental health back when we were younger, the crisis didn't seem, I don't know, as bad.
What was mental health to you when you and I were? Go on, put a few time points in it. When you were 10, so just leaving primary school. When you were 13. When you were 17, what did it mean to you?
See, for me, so I never realised until I got a lot older, understood the difference between mental health and mental illness when I was little. Mm-hmm. Because within my family, my granddad, who we didn't see, had schizophrenia and was in an asylum. And I say asylum because he wasn't in a ward like, the lovely wards that we have. Mm-hmm. these
Well,
days.
they were full
It
on
was
asylums. The
in-
last
it-
one closed in '93, I think.
It was
so.
an asylum. So, yeah, my understanding of when you use the word mental health made me think of, pardon my French, but at the time it was crazy granddad.
Yeah.
You know, that was the language that was used.
Yeah.
Like, there was no other way of explaining it. People would just say, oh, he's crazy. He's lost his mind. So I was brought up sort of, obviously I knew that wasn't the truth, as in he was crazy, but the things that he did were abnormal.
Yeah.
You know, so that was, I understood why people would say the word crazy, because they weren't what everybody else in the class as parents or grandparents would do. So I think I was lucky in that respect that I had some exposure to it.
Okay.
But the association of schizophrenia being when I was older, so not they shielded me from what that was when I was little, but as I grew up, when I was in my teens, it was very much somebody had schizophrenia. It meant that they were dangerous and most likely going to harm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as I started into looking at what I wanted to be in my career, then I knew. So sort of when I was 15, then I learned about mental health probably better. You know, that we all have mental health. And I knew about it a lot more.
Oh, that is a far more advanced.
You didn't think I was going to say that, did you?
Well, I didn't know what you were going to say.
No?
That's why I thought it'd be an interesting talking point. As I had absolutely zero concept of mental health or mental illness. 10 years of age, none whatsoever, no radar at all. Going through high school, 13, 14 years of age, still nothing.
No,
Still
I didn't.
absolutely nothing.
Was there anyone in your class that, like, because there wasn't in mine that self-harmed or had active attempts on their life that you knew of? Because there wasn't in mine, and I saw the girls in
Absolutely
PE.
nothing in my peers. You know, we had certain scenarios which now we'd probably put in diagnostic boxes, but it was either just a badly behaved child,
Yep.
a loner in the class, or a weirdo in the class. I could think of maybe one person to fit each category out of my whole year group. But again, they were just the kids' names that we gave back then,
Yeah.
you know, using that terminology. And then I get to 17, 18. Again, probably no concept of mental health or ill health, but starting to gain an understanding, and this is a very English thing, that people had their idiosyncrasies or foibles. You know, and that person's a bit eccentric. I love the term eccentric. So that's when I started to see certain differences that might fall into probably now the neurodiverse categories, neurodiversity, neurodistinction. And then my only concept of ill health was bonkers Bruno and all that, and the conversation around Frank. We've worked with Frank a number of times in recent years. Let me tell you, he's just a magnificent human.
His laugh is so
Magnificent
infectious.
human. Brilliant.
I remember watching him on
Brilliant
telly
man.
when I was little.
But anyhow, I've taken too much of your time.
Well,
haven't I?
no, I just want to say thank you for coming. I could talk to you all day, every day. I'm good at talking. It's a good job I'm a therapist, really. I don't know what other job I would do. I guess what everybody needs to know now, though, is that you're going to go off from here and we're going to practice the Hula for Happiness challenge.
We're going to practice.
Well, we're going to practice. I'm going to give you a little practice go, and then you're
Okay.
going to do it, and then we're going to record it.
Okay.
And then you're going to unleash who you're going to challenge.
Okay, game on. Well,
Yep.
let's do this.
Fabulous.
That's been a wonderful conversation, Jordana. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.